Hey guys, and welcome to week 4 of International Business. This week, as you can see, we are going to be looking at culture in international business, and culture's always been one of my favourite topics. You certainly only have to look around your classrooms to see the importance of understanding cultural diversity. And certainly, I dare say a number of you have already been able to sample firsthand some of the different cultural experiences that you see up on the screen in front of you. If you haven't yet been to Oktoberfest in Germany to get some proper German experiences, or been to Thailand to sample a full moon party, although the authenticity of that as a Thai cultural experience is perhaps debatable. And some of you may have already started planning to head to Rio and to experience things like the Mardi Gras. Whatever your interests, and certainly within the context of international business, in order to fully embrace these different cultures, it's important to at least have some semblance of understanding of each of them. And that's certainly what we're going to be looking at in this week's series of videos. So given that, we're going to start by defining culture and also looking at the benefits of cross-cultural literacy, why it's important to understand these differences across various cultures. We're going to look at the different elements of culture, what actually comprises what we understand as national culture. Evaluate Hofstede's cultural dimensions. You may have experienced Hofstede's dimensions previously to this point, and we're going to run through those today, and also describe the cultural clusters and the issues of things such as psychic distance, before finally discussing what might be the future and some important developments moving forward in relation to the issue of culture. Alright, obviously in order to understand culture, it's important to be able to first define it, and in a very simple sense, culture may be defined as a system of values and norms that are shared among a group of people and that, when taken together, constitute a design for living. Now, there are two key terms within this definition that it's important to understand. And the first, as you can see in front of you here, are values. Now, values are abstract ideas about what a group believes is to be good, right, and desirable. So things like our individual freedoms that we perhaps take for granted. Here in Australia, marriage is a key value within a number of different societies, and even things like not doing inappropriate things with your siblings. Of course, the other key term here are norms. Now, these are the social rules and guidelines that prescribe appropriate behaviour in particular situations in a society. And we can break this down even further into both folkways and mores as two specific types of norms. Now, folkways are very much everyday routine conventions that make up how we live our lives. So valuing things like being on time is something that influences how we conduct ourselves on a day-to-day basis. Mores, on the other hand, are a bit more important, and those norms that are seen as central to the functioning of a society and to its social life. So here in Australia, for example, the consumption of alcohol is very much part of our national identity. It contributes to how we see ourselves. You often hear about having a beer and having a drink, and it's central to the Australian sort of national identity, and certainly a key part of our culture. Overall, then, we can say that a group of people who share a common set of values and norms may then be referred to as a society. And this then, in turn, has consequences and implications for different cultures. I've also included a short clip down the bottom here, the YouTube video link. Have a look at that for some humorous takes on the importance of understanding cultures. And we're going to go through that, as I say, over the coming few videos. One of the key things that we need to look at here now is this distinction between a society, culture, and the nation state, or different countries. And one of the most common misconceptions, especially even within international business, is this idea that they are one and the same. And as we'll hopefully outline on this slide, that's very much not the case. The relationship between a society and a nation state, or a country, is often not one-to-one. So if, for example, if we look at a nation state or a country like Canada, within that particular country we can see clear evidence of Anglo cultures, of French, and also Native American cultures and societies within that one single country. More or closer to home, here in Australia, we can see that we have a range of different societies and cultural backgrounds within our country, and certainly contributes to our very much celebrated multicultural part of our national identity, really. And this is perhaps best demonstrated even within our politicians. So absolutely, we do have a strong Anglo-European background. This is evidenced by our current Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull. But also, we do also have, for example, people from a Greek background. This is Nick Xenophon, a former senator. And we also have people from, for example, Malaysian backgrounds, like the Senator Penny Wong. Unfortunately, this multiculturalism that we celebrate here in Australia isn't always such a good thing for people like Barnaby Joyce and other people who have been found out to have dual citizenships. It is also important to understand that country does not necessarily equate with a culture. So absolutely, there are some examples of single countries or nation states who exhibit a single culture. So for example, Korea and Japan, it's very clear within those particular countries that there's a strong dominant single culture. On the other hand, though, you have countries like Australia, like Great Britain, like the United States, which are very much multicultural societies. So there are many, many different cultures that are evident within that single country. It's also important to understand that nation states, or typically most countries, are political creations, as opposed to cultures, which typically form organically. Many African nation states, for example, exhibit a great number of different cultures or tribal influences within each of those. And certainly if we look at something like the former USSR, that single nation state, which was a political creation, has since been broken up into much smaller nation states, which are at least somewhat more reflective of the different cultures within that particular area. Finally, it's also important to understand a culture can also embrace several nations. So it can go the other way, where cultures are actually more broader than a single nation state or country. So we often hear about Western culture, which constitutes nations like Australia as a Western culture, the UK, the US, and many other nations. We also talk about Asian cultures, which of course constitutes many different Asian nations, African cultures, and so on. So the key takeaway here is that societies and cultures are not always one and the same, in fact often not one and the same, as different nation states or countries.